all capital is not good capital. What I think is a lesson in sort of the early stage and sort of getting innovative companies off the ground and building startups and looking for those, the right partner from a funding perspective is absolutely critical to success.
Welcome to the Future of HealthTech, sponsored by DZS Clinical Services, and I'm your host, Greg Ambra. The goal of this show is to introduce you to some of the most innovative leaders in the industry. We'll discuss some of the most exciting advances in drug and device development so you can learn from others who have been there before, get insights into what's next in medicine, and who knows, maybe even be inspired to do something new and extraordinary. I sit down with entrepreneurs and leaders in life sciences to uncover what they are doing now, and just as importantly, how they are doing it. Every episode is packed with insights, so sit back, relax, and listen. Our podcast today is brought to you by DZS Clinical Services, a small premier CRO with international full-service capabilities. DZS is a technology-enabled CRO bringing the best tools in the industry combined with expertise and an understanding that clinical development companies need partners, not just service providers. If you need a CRO to help support all or some of your next project, check them out at www.dzs.com. Don't forget to subscribe, and I have one more favor to ask before we jump into the show. If you like this episode, please share it with just one person you think might benefit or gain some insights from it. On today's episode, I sit down with Terry Loding. Terry's an accomplished life sciences industry executive with over 20 years of experience in drug development. During his career, Terry has worked in leadership positions for both large pharma companies and small startups, and has been part of multiple blockbuster approvals and strategic alliance deals. Terry is currently the Chief Operating Officer and Head of Strategy at X-Chem. X-Chem is an innovative company with a really interesting platform to quickly screen potential targets and identify drug candidate molecules with high quality and high efficiency. Terry, I was really excited to talk to you today about X-Chem and your accomplishments. I think what your team is doing there is really pushing drug development forward, combining some of the most exciting aspects of our industry like DNA libraries, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and cutting-edge medicine. Terry, tell us a little bit about what you and your team at X-Chem are doing right now.
Greg, thanks for having me today. First, just appreciate DZS sponsoring the podcast and the opportunity to talk a little bit about X-Chem and how I believe this organization is at the forefront of changing drug discovery services for the better. X-Chem is a drug discovery services organization. We offer services, products, and solutions that help accelerate all aspects of small molecule drug discovery, from screen through identification of a clinical candidate. Our core capabilities in DNA-encoded library screening, medicinal chemistry, and artificial intelligence are key components to helping us live out our mission of helping our pharmaceutical and biotech clients get medicines to patients faster. As you know, just being around this industry for some time, we're at the very beginning of a long journey of getting medicines to market and getting medicines to patients. We get involved at the concept stage. It's really the first time as new scientists or new biology is being validated for therapeutic purposes. We bring services and capabilities to bring small molecule chemistry to that target and hopefully provide a new therapeutic candidate. We in this industry, we all know the data point, right? 10 years, $2.6 billion to bring a product to market. A large component of that is driven by early stage attrition. If you think about just at the drug discovery program level, you can test or identify 10 to 15,000 small molecules as part of that early phase discovery process. Only 5 of them are ever even considered safe to get into clinical trials, and on average, only 1 of them will make it to market. We need to change that paradigm, and I think X-Chem brings some compelling technologies to that age-old problem.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, really exciting. And you're right? The process is so long that to be able to minimize the number of candidates or better identify some of those on the front end is critical. So you and I have both been in drug development, in the drug development space for many, many years. Now you're at the very forefront of it. How did you get involved in X-Chem?
It's an interesting journey. So as you rightly pointed out, of my 25 years in this industry, probably 20 of them have been on the D side of pharmaceutical research and development. So mostly in the clinical trial space. It was exciting. It was a fantastic journey. I think being close to therapeutics that are being tested in patients and making a difference every day was something that kind of drove me to wake up in the morning every single day. Being able to work in high value partnerships, being able to make an impact for my company and for patients, I think was exciting on that side of things. And as you know, my journey, started as really in sort of core operations, taking on some increasing responsibilities. About the middle part of that 20-year journey on the D side, I moved into business development and alliance management, managing partnerships. And about the last 2 years, I actually got involved, had the opportunity to work in both corporate development strategy and identifying new solutions for our customers in the development space. As part of that last position, I reported to our chief medical officer in my last company, and she had responsibility for drug discovery assets at the current CRO that I was working at. That really didn't fit with the core value proposition of the clinical trials business. So these were a company called Bioduro Sandia, which is actually, or Bioduro at the time, it's now Bioduro Sandia, which is an early stage drug discovery company. And they had two other companies. One was X-Chem and one was XRX, which was really set up to be a novel biotech company and discover new medicines. X-Chem was really interesting to me. They at the time, so this is 5 years ago, at the time were really focused on developing and marketing its DNA encoded library technology to pharmaceutical and biotech companies, and were also looking to discover some medicines of its own and develop medicines of its own. Well, what attracted me about to the company itself, and I had the opportunity to work with the two co-founders, one who is currently the CEO, Matt Clark, who developed this technology, and a company called Praxis, which was then acquired by GSK. And then when they left GSK, they innovated around the original patents and brought this to what I would say is a commercial scale. And if you think about just the science, number one, is fabulous. Their sense for business and opportunity, and their sense for being in this place to develop and discover new medicines and really trying to solve that problem was kind of what attracted me to this group. So it was my responsibility at the time to think about what did we want to do with this company. So that this technology had the ability, if you can think about those of you who are familiar with high throughput screening in drug discovery. You immediately picture warehouses full of robots and machineries and massive compound libraries of 1 to 2 million compounds that get screened over a period of 3 to 4 months. The technology here allows us to actually synthesize and screen over 200 billion molecules at a single time against a single target in a technology that fits in the size of an Eppendorf tube, which is about an inch size tube. That scale was just mind-boggling to think about from a non-science perspective, and certainly from a business perspective and a drug discovery perspective. The ability to take a target and test it against 200 billion molecules in a single experiment was really, really compelling to me. So it was my responsibility to kind of help them shape their strategy. What did they want to do? And as part of that process, I had a unique opportunity. Not too many people kind of go from development into research. Not too many people go from research into development. And they kind of liked what I was doing with them in terms of helping them shape their strategy, execute on that strategy, negotiate investment with our current ownership. And as a result, we actually ended up keeping the asset connected to PPD, but we spun it out, had it directly in an operating company that was directly held by our private equity firm. And then the founder offered me a position to join the company in its first iteration around alliance management and corporate strategy. So it was an exceptional opportunity. It allowed me to fill out my resume on the R side of it. And I think, for me as a personal development goal, it was great because I've now got experience on both the R and the D side. And that's really a unique position to be in this industry from a career perspective.
So full disclosure to our audience, you and I have known each other for many, many years. Thanks again for being on the show. And I could talk to you probably for an hour about all of these topics. I want to switch a little bit and talk about you and your growth. But you just mentioned you went from the D side to the R side. I've known you to be very intelligent, very adaptable throughout your career, very successful in all stages of it. Thinking back now, what would you say are some of the lessons that you've learned along the way, and what might you even do differently?
Yeah, it's interesting. As a business person with a non-scientific background, I work day in and day out with some exceptional scientists. And I think one of the things that I think as an executive is certainly from a business perspective, I think in terms of business models, I think in terms of revenue generation, I think in terms of customer service and satisfaction, making sure that our customer experience is along the journey. And there is a big difference into how customers think and what they're looking for between the D side and the R side. On the D side of things, your scientific hypothesis for the most part with respect to new medicines has been baked, right? And you're just kind of validating that. It's really more operational, it's plug and chug. And to a certain extent, the failure isn't really defined by you. The failure of the science isn't defined by you, right? It's defined on how well you execute operationally in terms of the clinical trial space. In the drug discovery side, it's different. I mean, you're walking in knowing, right, that 40% of the time you're going to succeed for your customers, and they think that that's outstanding. So that's a completely different paradigm, right? To get into thinking. I was like, oh my, when I first joined, it was like, wow, we've got a 40% success rate and our customers love us. That's amazing to me. Why do customers keep coming back to us? Mm-hmm. And the rationale is that, in other technologies, it was 25% success. So we're making a meaningful change to that. So, the other piece of that is, number one, is kind of, reframing the questions and what defines success, I think is a good thing. And then when you take any new opportunity, whether you're going from R to D, D to R, when you're going from tech to real estate, you have to understand your customers. You have to understand what they buy, what they value. And I think that that's a key piece. The other piece is learning to work with scientists. They're a prickly bunch. They're an exacting bunch. I'm a business guy. I live in Gray. And certainly it's learning and making, kind of bridging that communication point to say, you guys are doing awesome science. I need you to take it down to this level and then bring that out to the market. Help me do that. And it's kind of hard for them to bridge that. Some get it and some love it, and those are going to be your future life sciences executives. They understand the need to translate science on high-minded science, right, into how other people's will make buying decisions, for example, or how others will interpret the research as good or bad. So I think that's one of the key lessons. The other is be humble. We've known each other for a long time. I'm not somebody who needs to be the lead in every conversation. I'm not somebody who needs to define and run the meeting. I'm a very practical executive, and I think at the right time and the right place is you have to make some humble say, hey, I didn't know the science. Maybe I was selling that the wrong way, or maybe I was positioning it the wrong way from a business model perspective. I think you just have to be humble and accept that. And I think that's something I've learned over time. You don't always have to have all the answers. You need to have people on your team that know the right answers. And that's something that's growing up over time, especially in research.
Yeah, and that's excellent, right? Even at this stage in our careers, there's still so much to learn. Having that growth mindset is just critical to continued success.
Just one other thing in terms of lesson learned. Entrepreneurs, early stage companies, all have a need for capital, right? All capital is not good capital. What I think is a lesson in sort of the early stage and sort of getting innovative companies off the ground and building startups and looking for those, the right partner from a funding perspective is absolutely critical to success. They need to understand your science. They need to understand what you're trying to accomplish, and they need to know where those dollars are going to. And I think if you get a misalignment, you can probably have a lot of trouble along the way. The road will be bumpy, number one, and number two, your science will likely not make it to market. And it's not because it was a failure in science. It was really a failure in aligning expectations between your funding source and what you're trying to accomplish. So it was a little bit of a left turn there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's valuable advice for a lot of members of our audience. I think finding the right partner, right? The right development equity partner is critical. Last question, Terry. So as you look into the future of both X-Chem and drug development, you're on the cutting edge now, but what's exciting for you? What do you see as the next thing?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think one is, technologies like CRISPR have really unlocked what I would say are new and novel biologic targets, right? And I think the issue there is going to be they've opened up the aperture so wide Now it's a matter of how do you pick and choose, and how do you drug therapeutically, whether it be small molecule, gene therapy, large molecule, whatever it happens to be, whatever the therapeutic approach is. How do you deal with that aperture being so wide? There's so many new opportunities, and how do you figure that? I think that's number one. I think that's going to be a challenge of this industry. Number two, but that's also an exciting thing, right? It offers new ways to drug targets, new ways to address disease that's been out there, for years, that has been, marginally treated therapeutically. I think the other exciting thing is really, the promise, realizing the promise of and where artificial intelligence will have the biggest impact. There's lots of companies out there in the biotech space that love to sprinkle the word AI on it and say that that's going to transform, and we're going to identify the drug in 2 months, something that people have been working on versus 5 years. I think we acknowledge one of the things I love about X-Chem is we acknowledge that both innovation and experimental platforms in science has to go along with innovation and computational and digital platforms like artificial intelligence. And we need to ask practical questions about how AI and where AI will be suited. It's not the end all be all for every part of the value chain. So as we bring together great scientists with our core experimental platform of DNA encoded libraries, and we look to apply our artificial intelligence platform, which is branded Artemis AI. It's really picking the right opportunities to do that. And we think we have high quality data, vast amounts of data that's generated off our DNA encoded library platform. And chemistry is all math, right? It's all stuff that can be articulated well, characterized well, and it's prime for use in artificial intelligence solutions. So linking that up with things that you need to have in order to get a drug to market, optimizing the physical chemical properties, so things like solubility, permeability, all of those items I think are key in order to getting a drug safely through the gateways. Identifying core ADME properties, right? So absorption and metabolic excretion, right? And making sure that we're optimizing molecules to meet those thresholds that are actually going to have a therapeutic window in patients. And I think that it's really practical. I think we're taking a very practical approach, but we acknowledge that human needs to be in the loop, right? There needs to be a decision-making process that's part of it. Artificial intelligence is an aid to help scientists think deeper about problems. And I think combining experimental technology and digital technology is the way that we're going to achieve, lower attrition rates in early stage drug discovery and accelerating the process of identifying candidates for the clinic. That's, I think, one of the most exciting things about being at the company that I'm at today.
I think that's an excellent place to wrap this up. Terry, thank you so much for joining me today. This was an excellent conversation. If folks want to reach out and contact you either through X-Chem or otherwise, how can they do it?
Yeah, I think there's probably two best ways. Me personally, I'm available on LinkedIn. It's probably the most direct place to connect with me directly. I'd love to be able to follow up any questions and comments about X-Chem. And as the company itself, I'd encourage you to go to our website, www.x-chemrx.com. And feel free to browse through our website. It's a nice indication of our success and proof points, as well as the services and solutions that we provide to both pharmaceutical and biotech companies.
Great. Terry, thanks again for joining me.
Thank you, Greg, for having me. And would love to follow up on this and have a beer and talk for hours on end about this. It'd be great.
Sounds great. That's a deal. All right. And that's all we have time for today. A great conversation with Terry Loding. As a reminder, the podcast is sponsored by DZS Clinical Services, and if you want to reach us, you can do it at www.dzs.com, and you can find me on LinkedIn at Greg Ambra. Thanks again for joining us, and stay tuned for more episodes.